Hi, I'm Jaclyn.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
Welcome back. Welcome to our third episode.
Yeah.
Today, Courtney and I are recording back to back, so we have both had multiple cups of coffee at this point.
So it is a true Caffeinated Crimes episode.
This is it, guys. This is where the name came from. This is where the name came from. We live for this shit.
Yeah, this is our prime.
Yes. So hopefully our caffeinated rants will be
entertaining and not wrong and not educated.
Yes. Hopefully they will be on topic. No guarantees, but we're going to try our best to stick to today's case.
And if nothing else, we'll just snip, edit.
Exactly. That's what editing is for. So, speaking of today's crime, what are we covering today, Courtney?
We're going to do the Accomack County Arsonists. So,
ooh.
This is one I had not heard of until Jaclyn was like, I read this book from a book club and we got to do it on the podcast because it is batshit insane.
Speaking of my book club, shout out to my Fountain of Evidence True Crime Book Club at the Fountain Bookstore in downtown Richmond, Virginia. So they're a lovely group of ladies, and yeah, we read this book a couple of months ago, and I was like, wow, this is a fascinating case. And so when Courtney and I got this podcast up and running, I was like, we definitely have to cover this one. So
yeah, shout out to them. I haven't met you guys, but I'm sure you're awesome. So yeah, so we're doing the Accomack County Arsonist, and we had two main resources today. We have a Washington Post article that was kind of detailing the book I'm about to mention and just a general overview of this case. And the second is a book. It's called American Fire, Love, Arson, and Life in a Vanishing Land by Monica Hesse. And that's where a lot of this information comes from. She really did a deep dive and did a good job.
Such a good book. Highly recommend.
So I'm going to go ahead and just paint a little Bob Ross picture for you. Paint some little happy little trees.
Don't burn them down, please.
Please don't burn them. Let them be happy trees. So
leave them be. We don't want fiery trees.
Please, no fiery trees. Okay, so Accomack County, Virginia. It is on the eastern shore of Virginia. So it was a railroad and farming town. But with big farms and corporate grocery stores, it just kind of drove out those farms. And then when the passenger railroad left, a bunch of people did too. So it kind of became kind of desolate, not a lot of people. Purdue and Tyson chicken plants were their largest employers. And so we went ahead and did some research and some math. Shout out to my boyfriend for helping us with the math. So Accomack County is 1,310 square miles, which is a pretty long county.
That is a large area for a county, guys.
Large area. Okay, so within that area, there are 33,000 people, according to the census in 2012. And did the math with help from Kevin, and that's 25 people per 1 square mile, which is insane. And if you're like, well, maybe that's not that bad, we went ahead and looked up Richmond, which is the capital of Virginia. So it is 62.57 square miles, and it has a population of 227,000. So that is about 3,627 people per 1 square mile. So clearly,
that's a big difference.
It's a huge difference. But people do say this is a very beautiful place, even though people have kind of abandoned it. It's really beautiful. But because, I guess, of their history, they're not a big fan of outsiders or new people. So they had this thing, it was born heres, come heres, and been heres. So the born heres, you were born there, you're a true Accomack County native, you're trusted, you're loved by the community, you're one of them.
You're accepted.
So then there's the come heres. So those are people who move in, they're not trusted, they're not really liked, and they can eventually become been heres. But that's at 25 years of being there?
Yeah.
And even then,
you have to be here a long time. You have to have established yourself through, a business or a family or something that you have to prove to them, hey, I'm here for the long haul.
Yeah. And you'll never be a born here, but you'll get close. So, Accomack County, we got a lot of room, got a lot of space, a lot of people have left. That's super important. It comes up. So, November 12th, 2012, Deborah Clark calls 911 at 10:41 p.m. and she's reporting that a vacant house next door is burning. And it took about 45 minutes to get this fire under control. So all of Accomack County Fire Department, they're volunteers. The fire chief, he is a hired position. Everyone else is a volunteer. They have very limited water tanks. Like, they don't really have, like, fire hydrants like we do. Just a few fire tanks around the town. So then, at 1:30 a.m. on November 13th, Helen Hasty calls 911. And she's like, there's these old buildings on the edge of my property, and they're on fire. And then at 1:38 a.m., only 8 minutes later, a third fire is called into 911. So that same day at 9:30, that November 13th, another abandoned house fire was called in. And then at 10:30 and 11:30, 2 more houses are called in, both abandoned. So within the next 5 months, these 6 are going to turn into 76 fires across this county.
That is a lot of fires.
That's a lot of fires.
When in the book they talk about after the second fire that they're like, oh wow, that's crazy. I mean, that's what a busy night. We never get 2 fires in one night. And so then when the third one comes in, it's like, oh shit, something is happening. And obviously it would turn into something huge.
And yeah, and you could maybe even be like, oh, it's just some dumb kids accidentally caught something on fire. It's November. It's probably cold. Maybe somebody was just in there, had a fire going.
Yeah.
But as it started progressing, it was obvious we have an arson in our county. So, little fact about arsonists, only 17% of them are caught. And it's the most under-prosecuted crime because generally they just don't confess. I mean, it doesn't really, I guess, weigh on them like a murder would. And most of them are white and most are men. And there's very little info on female arsonists because they're just so rare. Like, it just really, really happens. A lot of the reason they arsonists commit fires is they just love havoc. Sometimes they're just bored. And there are a few categories. There's revenge, thrill-seeking, and disorder coping. So some do it with to cope with their childhood trauma. You could also try therapy instead. A little bit more expensive, but a lot more legal.
Yeah, it might be better for you in the long run. If you do actually get caught for your crimes, it will definitely be cheaper. So
definitely cheaper in the long run. Yeah, so these are kind of the reasons people do it. Please don't catch things on fire on purpose. Just don't do it.
It's not a good idea.
If it's an accident, that's okay. But please don't do it on purpose.
But even if it's an accident, let someone know because they would like to put out the fire.
Yeah.
Another reason that arsonists typically are not caught is because there's just no evidence because you literally burned everything to the ground. So it's very hard to convict someone of this crime because there's so little to go off of after the fire is over because everything has been burned, and what has not been burned has just been soaked in water. So you just lose all kinds of physical evidence, so this makes it really, really difficult to prosecute.
Yeah, definitely. And, you can, with fire investigations, it's kind of hit or miss. Like, sometimes you can be like, clearly it started here, so it looks like it's arson, maybe because there's gasoline thrown everywhere, things like that. But, I mean, it's not like you show up and you're like, clearly this person was murdered. Clearly this person was hit over the head. Clearly, there was an assault that happened. It's like really hard to prosecute, really hard to prove. And like I said, they don't confess because they don't feel bad about it. So it's pretty hard.
And fire investigators have come under a lot of criticism lately as well.
Yeah.
Like you said, with it's very hit and miss, and sometimes you can tell for sure and sometimes you can't. But even in recent crimes that have come up, there are things that maybe were prosecuted in the past that now they're saying, oh, well, this may be junk science, we're not completely sure. So it's very iffy to get detailed, accurate information on what may or may not have happened in a fire.
Yeah. So, all right, back in Accomack County, there's Todd Godwin, and he's the sheriff. So he's like, I'm going to request a list of all these abandoned houses in the county. And this, in total, is 800. And that's only the abandoned houses people are paying taxes on. So there are a ton of other buildings that are just not on record. But But like I said, 33,000 people in this 1,000 square mile county and 800 abandoned buildings that could be the next target. So that's going to be tough for police. So November 18th, the police decide to set up a few tents near abandoned buildings, especially those with multiple access points. So not, dead ends where one way in, one way out, where they could easily get away through multiple places. And while the police were, setting up at these abandoned buildings over the next few nights, there were fires 7 through 12 occurred at other abandoned buildings. So on the list that Todd Godwin made of likely buildings to be targeted, number 6 was targeted and burned down on December 8th. It was the 28th fire, but the sheriff's office just didn't have enough men, and there weren't enough police to go around. So the police are getting really frustrated, and they decide, we can't handle this on our own. We're going to go ahead and call the Virginia State Police special agents in, and because we don't even have any fire investigators, like we're at a wit's end. There's been 28 fires, from, November 12th until December 8th. Like, that's a lot of fires.
That's a lot of fires in a very short amount of time for such a small town. I mean, small towns don't have that many people on staff for police. So, they're pulling in everyone that they can. They're working overtime, but they just don't have the manpower, especially with how spread out and rural and abandoned this area is, which is why we made sure to give you a picture earlier of what this county looks like, because that's super important as far as why these fires were able to continue for as long as they did, because they just don't have the manpower to deal with that in that spread out of an area.
Yeah, and also good on this police department for calling people in, because I know a lot of times, some police departments get really territorial over their sections, and they don't want to call in outside help. But this one, they really seem to just, put away any pride and be like, we just need help. We need to keep people safe. And that's very important. So these special agents and fire investigators come in, and one of the lead profilers, John Cramer, he's like, I have no suspects at all. So I'm just going to go ahead and start with the firefighters. Because there is a history of arsonists also being firefighters, because, as a firefighter, you get to kind of be around those fires to kind of
because they just have a fascination with fires. And so whether it's starting the fire or putting out the fire, I can't remember his name, maybe we'll cover him later, but he was a firefighter who would start fires so that he could go then be a hero and put them out. So there is
That's John
a long
Orr.
History. Yes. Perfect. He's on our list.
We'll cover him. Don't worry.
Yep.
But yeah, so there is a history of this, and so he's like, I have no suspects, so we're just gonna start with you guys. And that kind of came back just negative, not, no one was really suspicious.
No giant red flags or anything.
Yeah, and so they did start to put some motion detector cameras outside possible target houses, and police just kept watching for any suspicious cars that were alone, on rural roads at night. They still had the men out there in tents on the high target ones. They set up roadblocks on some of the more rural roads, just trying everything to try and really catch someone being somewhat suspicious so they could get a lead. They did find shoe and tire prints, and some wadded rags at the crime scenes, but it didn't lead anywhere. There's no other forensic evidence. They don't really have anything to go off of, because everything's just coming back not helpful. Mm-hmm. And they did have a geographic profiler, Isaac Van Patten. So he made an algorithm to try to find the most targeted areas so they could try and, keep focusing on those areas and which one might be next. And he actually ended up interviewing the future, who they would find out, arsonist, to see if they had seen or heard anything while nearby fires were happening. And he didn't even know it. And soon after that interview, the algorithm did change and point away from the found to be arsonist's house. So that really did influence it as well. I mean, that was a hindsight thing. They didn't realize it at the moment. And then, this is a tight-knit community. And so there was some citizen vigilantes. Matt Hart, he started a group with Seth Matthews called the Eastern Shore Arsonist Hunters. So they were trying to use like Google Maps to see where he was striking. They were like tailing some cars, but it just didn't really work. They couldn't really find anything. So then on Valentine's Day, there is a big fire that occurs. So it is the first fire that was set to an occupied house. So the dad and the 2 daughters had just left. And so obviously these arsonists were watching the house and they knew someone lived in it and they went ahead and set it on fire. So then one of the Virginia State police officers who came in, Bobby Bailey, was pretending to be a local farmer because, you know, this town is exclusive, very tight-knit. So he's like driving around, hanging out, and one of his cameras catches movement on March 5th at Old Church Road. So he didn't make it in time to catch the arsonist, but he could have sworn he sees a woman on the camera.
Interesting.
Very interesting. So March 12th, there's Whispering Pines. It's an old resort. It's been very vacant, and it's really big. It was huge.
Huge.
It was set on fire. So in this one, there was not enough water in the area to even put it out. So they had to contain the fire and box it in and allow it to just burn everything until they could extinguish it. And so this is really big too, because they're like, this is just getting way out of hand. These are not just like some stupid kids, you know, messing around. Like, they're targeting humongous places. April 1st, 2013, police have set up kind of a sting, like they have done so many nights before, and they finally catch a man on camera lighting a fire. And while the police are speaking to him, a woman pulls up in her van, and many people hear on the police scanner, and they're coming to see who these arsonists are. And just to kind of put it in perspective about how much time the police have put into this, so between December 1st and about mid-April, there was 26,378 police work hours and 14,924 overtime hours. And that's just within like 4 or 5 months.
This is a lot of time spent on these arsons.
Yeah, it's crazy. So the arsonists were found out to be well-known locals, Charlie Smith and Tonya Bundick. And Charlie says to the sheriff, Todd Godwin, and he's like, Todd, I'm sorry, but I didn't light them all. And Jaclyn, why don't you go ahead and tell us about them? I don't know as much about this. Jaclyn did the research, so any reactions of mine are going to be genuine. Because
Yes.
I don't know most of this.
So these people are quite interesting characters. So Charlie Smith, who was also sometimes known as Charlie Applegate, so his mom remarried when he was young, and sometimes he used his stepdad's last name, sometimes he used his biological father's last name, so he was kind of known around town with either name. So at the time that he is caught, he is 38 years old. So Charlie dropped out of high school multiple times, actually. So he would drop out, he would kind of work on cars with his stepdad for a little bit, and then he would try to go back to school and then drop out again. And I think the last time he went back to school for about an hour and then decided he was just done, and so he left. So he doesn't really have much past 9th, 10th grade education. So he, like I said, works with his stepdad at Eastern Shore Auto fixing cars, and he does a lot of like body work, and he is also, surprise, surprise, a volunteer at the Tasley Fire Department.
Wow, what a coincidence. How crazy.
And the Tasley Fire Department was one of the fire departments that was called out to these fires. However, Charlie was not actively volunteering with them during the times of the fires. So he was not out here fighting his own fires, but he had previously been a volunteer with them. So poor Charlie, he's got some issues. So he gets into drugs, kind of in and out, a lot of things going on, kind of bounces around as far as who he lives with. So he lives with an uncle for a while, and he starts writing himself checks. So his uncle looked the other way to his drug use, but then when Charlie starts stealing from him, he's like, yeah, nah, I'm done. So Charlie is sentenced to 3 years in prison, but he gets out early for a good time. So he ends up doing a robbery with someone whose name he doesn't remember. So I feel like
I'm just going to give a little piece of life advice. If you don't know a person well enough to remember their name, Don't go commit crimes with them.
Yeah, just, it's probably not a good idea. They might turn on you. What?
I don't understand that. How you would, maybe to me, I've never really, I mean, I'm sure I've done, like, illegal things, but as far as, like, commit a crime, you know, I just could not imagine, like, robbing someone and then being like, who did I do that with again? I don't remember.
Like,
but I guess if he's all doped out, then...
Yeah, and I think this speaks a lot to Charlie's state of mind now and possibly later when these fires are occurring. Especially, so after he's arrested for this robbery, he immediately confesses, so he's not trying to hide anything. He's not trying to act like he didn't do something. So what they stole was a cordless drill, an air compressor, a propane torch, and a battery charger. So after he confesses to this robbery, the police ask him if he wants to say anything, and he says, quote, "The battery charger was for the cordless drill," unquote. So...
Okay.
Just a very interesting comment, which again might go back to his state of mind, his intelligence level.
Was she ever able to find, or was he ever tested, like, an official IQ or anything?
I mean,
I know he didn't finish high school, but still, people can still be very smart and just not be, like, good at school and stuff. So I didn't know if, like, maybe he did just have a very low IQ and just can't understand, you know, kind of what's happening. Especially because, you know, like, Todd, I'm sorry, I didn't light all the fires. Like, that's a very weird, you know.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like a normal
odd
response.
Criminal behavior. It's not normal behavior that you see from a criminal. So, I don't remember specifically if the author of this book reported on his IQ, but I think it was pretty well understood that he did just have kind of an overall low intelligence level. So after this robbery, he goes back to jail for a little bit, gets out, he meets a girl, he gets her pregnant, and he proposes, but she says no, but she allows him to continue to have a relationship with his daughter, so she's like...
That's very good, you know, especially if the guy is not horrible and wants to be involved in the life, then that's good. Absolutely.
So then he meets this lady named Mary at work. And so Mary has a couple of kids, so they move in together. So they are together and they live together for 10 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, and so Charlie's continuing to work at the body shop. He works at the chicken plant for a while. And they break up after 10 years because Mary has some intimacy issues and she has been cheated on before. And she just is afraid that Charlie's going to cheat on her like her ex did, even though he's never cheated on her before, but... she just has these deep-rooted issues, and so they're just not able to make it work. So they break up, and so Charlie gets back into drugs, and he's super depressed, and he's just really struggling. So in 2011, he's out at a bar named Shuckers, which was a super popular place to be in town. It is no longer there. I looked because, road trip, but it doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yes.
Did they burn it down? Just kidding.
I don't remember what happened to it, but I think it was just, I don't know.
Yeah.
So he's at this bar, and he's in the bathroom, and he has some cocaine, and he's just really depressed. But then, before he decides to do the cocaine, he meets this lady named Tonya Bundick. So Tonya Bundick, she kind of had a rough upbringing. It comes out later that her father was likely abusive. She was bullied a lot as a child through school, and so then she becomes a nursing assistant, so she's working at that for a while. She has 2 children with a man that she kind of dates on and off, so they live together for a little bit, and then they don't, and, not a whole lot of consistency. Sometimes he pays her child support, sometimes he doesn't, so just a very chaotic life. So then Tanya's mom dies suddenly, and Tanya actually finds her in the backyard of her house. She was out hanging the clothesline, and she's just gone. And so Tanya finds her. Did she just
have a heart attack or an aneurysm or something?
I think it was a heart attack. Yeah. So she's just
that's horrible.
That's
Man,
so traumatic. So then Tanya and her kids move into her mom's house. So in her mom's will, the house was left to both her and her sister Angie. But Angie says that Tanya can have it because when their grandmother passes away, that she'll just get her house. So they kind of come to that agreement.
Some good compromise.
Yeah, so that works. So now Tanya has a glow up. And so she is no longer this bullied girl. She starts tanning all the time. They said that she would tan at all the different places around town because there's like a max number of times that you can tan per day. So she would max them out at all of the places. So if, you know,
I just want to do like a little PSA here. I know people like to tan, and that's okay, but tanning is really, really bad for you. Like, even a little bit increases your chances of skin cancer by so much.
Yes.
So please, if you are tanning, do not max out the amount. Do not go everywhere. Please just be careful. Please take care of your skin. You have one body and one skin for the rest of your life. Take care of it. Don't let something stupid like skin cancer or any cancer, if you can help it, you know, prevent you. But especially, like, just don't do it.
Yeah, don't. It's really not good in general, but also those rules are in place for a reason. So if they tell you you can only tan twice per day, don't go to every tanning salon in town and tan twice per day. So she's just completely remade herself, and so now she's like out and about around town, and so these people who used to bully her, they don't even recognize her. She's known for dressing very provocatively, like she'll show up to work. So she worked at Shuckers as a dancer, and she would show up just like complete lingerie, and this was not like a strip club type place, but she's like, I'm just gonna bear it all. And they said that she was very happy-go-lucky, and she was proud of the body that she had, and she was going to show it off.
And, you know, that's fine, too. I mean, if you want to if you're bullied, if you have a bad life, and you want to glow the fuck up and just be like a big middle finger to everyone who bullied you and be happy and and be confident, like, please do that.
Go for it.
But please don't catch things on fire. Please don't become an arsonist. Let's stop there.
Spoilers.
I already said it. And, you know, just don't tan so much. You can tan a little bit, but not too much.
Not too much.
Go ahead.
So Charlie and Tanya are this dynamic duo, and so they are dating, and Charlie eventually moves into the house with Tanya and her kids. They open up a joint body shop / boutique. So she wants to sell boutique clothing in this tiny little area where they live, and he wants to open up his own body shop since he's been working in his stepdad's for so long. And so Charlie's body shop is appropriately just named Charlie's, and Tanya's boutique is named Little Taste of Toot, which
I'm sorry, when I hear toot, all I think is fart.
So apparently that was her childhood nickname by her father. So
did she fart a lot?
I don't know, but a little taste of toot is where she sells her.
But I mean, that is pretty cool. Like, you're wanting to open a body shop, you're wanting to open a boutique. Like, you get your car fixed and you get to shop.
Exactly. Save money on the rent. You just have a joint little...
It's
perfect.
Smart.
So they fall in love, and they're running their businesses, and they're living together, and life's going well. So one day they're out at a restaurant, and, you know, Charlie's really nervous, but he proposes to Tanya. Not a whole big to-do, just, you know, them sitting together, eating restaurant. He asks her to marry him. She says yes, but she wants to keep it a secret because people might get jealous. So this is a typical response to someone asking you.
This is what year is this? Like
2012.
2012. 2011-ish, maybe? 2012.
Yeah.
Anyway,
right before. Yeah.
Facebook is in full strength.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned
Twitter,
that.
I think Instagram's around this. It's new, but it's there. And all I'm saying is people love to make people jealous on social media.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some would argue that's the point of social media, is to just flex on them.
That's a good point.
So, I find that weird that she's like, I'm scared people might get jealous.
Yes.
It just makes me wonder if she's hiding something else.
Like why? Like, why are you not telling people that you're engaged? Like, that's an exciting thing. You would want to share that.
You know, and especially if you're so in love with someone and you're like, you know, I get to be with this person forever and we're going to get married and all that. Like, I don't know. It just seems a very odd reason to keep it a secret. But
well, so what happens next, Courtney, I believe might explain why she reacted the way that she did.
Oh, okay.
So Tanya plans her own quote-unquote surprise engagement. So
no, she doesn't.
So,
well, it's just gonna be me.
So I think that it was not enough for Tanya. Like, I think she wanted to make people jealous, and the way that it happened,
she wanted to be that, like,
it wasn't good enough for her and her new image. So she talks to Charlie. He's fine with it. So they plan this whole shebang. So they're gonna do it at Shuckers, which is where they met. So they have a cake ready to bring out afterwards, and so the cake is like a yellow themed cake. So they have matching yellow outfits to coordinate with the cake.
Okay.
For this whole engagement. So,
oh my goodness.
So they have it all planned. So Charlie comes out. He gets down on the knee with the ring. Oh, she's so surprised. And she says yes. And they wheel out their color-coordinated cake. And everyone's happy.
I will say, I have noticed, like, a big trend I've seen on Facebook of people getting engaged is it's like and I'm sure the women might not know that the engagement's happening, and maybe the men just plan it with, like, their friends and family. Mm-hmm. But it's like they have, like, engagement parties. So, like, the second after you get engaged, like, you go back to your house and all your friends are there, and they're like, congrats, and they have, like, signs. And I mean, I had never seen this, and in the past month I've seen like 4.
That is crazy. I
don't know if that's like a big trend of them. Yeah, and it's like a banner, and it's like, she said yes, and all this, and I'm like, what if she says no?
Yeah, that's not gonna be a fun party anymore.
Yeah, but like all your friends and family are there, and there's a party, so maybe they're just trendsetters.
Oh, Charlie and Tanya are some trendsetters. Let's get into it. So you mentioned Facebook, Courtney. I would love to bring up Facebook.
Oh, Facebook.
Charlie and Tanya have a joint Facebook account. And it's called T-Char. So
T-Char?
Yes. And
you can't just put Tanya Charlie?
Nope, it is T-Char. It's one word, they're combined names, and they post to each other. So Tanya will thank Charlie for dinner and sign it Tanya, and Charlie will say something to Tanya about the day they have and sign it Charlie, and in their, like, public Facebook posts.
This is why I don't really like joint Facebook accounts. Because, one, I never know who's talking.
It's kind of weird, guys.
Is the girl messaging me saying, you up? Or is her husband?
So many questions.
That's not happened to me, but, you know.
Sure.
But I'm just saying, I don't know. It's just very weird. And honestly, I'm surprised because I still know joint Facebook accounts exist. I'm still surprised Facebook allows them because Facebook recently hasn't allowed you to have a name that's not your own.
Interesting.
And I know a girl that got married and she had to upload her marriage license to change her last name on Facebook.
Ooh, Facebook getting too serious over there.
Obviously, this is 2012, so it was still going on. But, I mean, just make 2 separate accounts. Mm-hmm. And if you want to thank each other for dinner, say it to their face.
Yeah, and just maybe have a conversation. It's
everything
crazy.
Doesn't have to be on social media. Just not everything.
But you know what Tanya did use social media for, Courtney?
What? Oh, no.
So, I'm
scared.
She would write these poems that she would call Tanya-isms. And
okay.
So they're just these little, like, bits and pieces of things that she has to say. So I have written one down for you, Courtney, that I would like to share.
I'm so scared.
So,
okay.
So this, and these are things that she posts often on their T-Char Facebook page.
Okay. Does
Quote,
she sign it? Like,
yes.
Dash Tanya? Or does everyone just know this is Tanya?
Well, she says, like, here's another Tanya-ism. Like, she calls them Tanya-isms. Yeah.
Did she make that up her own? Because if you make up your own, like... Anyway, yes. Go ahead. Just read it. So,
quote, it's raining, it's pouring. The old lady been out whoring. She dribbling down her chin. Wonder where that mouth been.
Oh my god.
The skirt is torn. She looking real wore.
Oh.
He tapped that ass. She probably got gas.
I mean, her boutique is called Little Taste of Toot.
Taste of Toot. Poor old soul been freaked in the hole.
Oh my god.
She can't sit down. She looked like a clown. End quote.
All I'm saying is Shakespeare ain't got nothing on these Tanyas.
I am crying trying to get through that.
And did she do this as a joke, or was she like, I'm genuinely like writing you guys a poem?
She's writing these poems for her Facebook friends. So, and there's plenty more. There's lots included in this book. It's quite delightful. But that one was my favorite.
I mean, I can see why. She's dribbling down her chin? Like, girl.
Oh, gosh. So, there are lots of Facebook groups in Accomack County that are discussing the fires, obviously. So, Courtney, you mentioned some of the local vigilantes that were trying to find out who was doing this. So, it's in conversation a lot. So, one time, so Tanya's chimed in a couple of times. So one time she says, quote, I myself am not afraid, just cautious. I'm always on the lookout when my animals start barking and my livestock start making noise. Make yourself aware of the little things, end quote.
I mean, that's not that crazy. I mean, that's something anyone would say. I mean, hindsight, clearly
you're
she's not afraid.
setting these fires and then you're going out of your way to engage in these conversations about them.
It does remind me, like, you know how they usually say when someone goes missing and there's like a search party, they say usually the person who did it, like who kidnapped them or killed them, will help with the search party because it's like it's like another way to like get off from their crime. So I'm assuming this is probably what she's been doing.
Yeah, absolutely. She also says at one point, quote, seems to me some of the properties being burned are people who are taking advantage of an arsonist being on the loose, so they're burning their own properties. Just a thought, end quote.
So, I don't want to seem privileged, but this is a very small town, and I'm wondering, like, how many of these people actually have fire insurance that would happen before these fires that could be like, guess I'll burn this down.
Like, I'll just burn. And fire insurance on these abandoned houses. I mean, they're not these super, like, wealthy, like...
Yeah, it's not like people are burning their own houses. They're abandoned buildings where it's like, well, this building was probably worth nothing anyway. Like,
yeah, so even if you did have insurance on it, are you getting anything out of it? I don't know. So also interesting was right around Christmas, the police sheriff and one of the Virginia State Police fire investigators were actually at a local diner, and Charlie said to them, quote, y'all must be busy with all these fires going on, end quote.
Oh,
so,
okay.
That's super interesting.
Not suspicious.
Yeah, not at all. So, Charlie and Tanya are doing their thing, and, you know, they've had their engagement, so now they're going to have this wedding. So, they're going to have a November Rain-themed wedding. So, this is going to be interesting. They're going to invite 300 people, but they say security is going to be super tight. So, they're going to have security at this huge wedding in this small-ass town.
Okay, I mean, this isn't like a celebrity wedding. You don't have to get that tight on security.
Right? Charlie and Tanya, what are y'all doing? Well, now we got some trouble in paradise. So, one of Tanya's sons starts acting out at school, and he's having some behavioral problems, and so she quits her job to end up staying home with him because he just keeps getting kicked out of school. So she's got to spend more time with him. And then Charlie's mom dies of cancer, and Charlie's baby mama won't let him around their daughter because she thinks that him and Tanya are on drugs.
That's understandable. I can see that, you know.
Yeah. A lot of issues going on for Charlie and Tanya. They're struggling financially. Like, they're having a lot of issues, and we'll find out later that they're having one specific issue that led to these fires.
Okay.
So, on November 12th, 2012, as we know, the night of the first fire, Charlie and Tanya are driving around, just blowing off steam. They say later that they like to do this a lot, just kind of hang out. They'll go to McDonald's, they'll go to Walmart, walk around, just kind of
I get that
getting
too,
their mind off
especially
everything.
It's a small town.
Yeah.
There's probably not that many places you can go to, like, hang out if you want to get out of the house.
Once Shuckers closes, I mean, there's nothing going on. So they're having a conversation about how everything's going lately, and Charlie tells Tanya that he'll do anything to make her happy. So, naturally, like you do, Tanya responds, get out of this car and set that house on fire.
Oh.
Okay.
Like, was she being sarcastic?
Yeah, so
Is this
he
like a
thinks
test?
so. So he gets out of the car, and he's like, yeah, okay, and so he leaves, and then he comes back, and Tanya is so happy. Like, she is just ecstatic, and she is just so in love with him. And so they leave, and they're driving around some more. And then she wants to go back because she wants to see the house on fire. So he takes her back, and Charlie didn't actually set the house on fire. So Tanya realizes this. So this bitch gets out and does it herself.
Oh my
so
God.
Tanya sets the first fire.
Okay.
So, as we later find out, Charlie and Tanya are not having sex.
Oh.
So, they have
That
not
is a
had
problem.
sex, yes, in 18 months. And in his interview with police, Charlie says, quote, "The moment I fell in love with her, my dick stopped working," end quote.
I don't think that's how it's supposed to work. I think it's the opposite.
So poor Charlie, he goes to a doctor, he goes to a pastor, he sees a therapist, he tries all of these things, and they're like, it's in your head, I don't know what to tell you, you just can't get a boner. But
Did he try Viagra?
I don't know. That would probably be cheaper than all the legal proceedings that come from all these fires.
Very true.
So, but luckily for him, Tanya realizes that fire gets her going. So, and it becomes a rumor around the town later that they set these fires so they were able to have sex, but they didn't actually have sex until a few nights before they were caught during the last fire.
Because I think I read they only had sex once during this whole time. And
yes.
I mean, if you're setting fires to like get sexually aroused, you better be fucking day and night. That's all I'm saying.
At least get, yes. But I guess for Tanya, this was the arousal for it. Like, she didn't need the sex afterwards. Like, this was enough for her. She just really enjoyed these fires. So,
to each his own, I guess. But maybe just like, I don't know, have a bonfire, get a fireplace. I don't know.
Yeah, there's other methods to go here. So
light a candle.
So Charlie's arrested because he's the one caught setting the fire that occurs on April 1st. So he's arrested. Courtney, as you mentioned, he tells them that he didn't set them all. So in the interview, they basically go through all 86 fires, and Charlie gives details for some of them. So they'll bring them up, and he's like, yeah, I did it in this way at this time, and then this happened. And then for some of them, he just says no comment.
Okay.
So when he tells the police that he knew the fire on April 1st was a setup, like he knew that there were police in the area because he said there were too many cars around as they were driving to this abandoned house. So police ask him why he lit it anyway if he thought that it was a setup, and he says, quote, "She's a lot smarter than me, and she said it wasn't," end quote. Which again goes back to the questioning of Charlie's own intelligence level, and he's like, she said that it was fine, so I trusted her and I went with it.
And could maybe part of him, he was like, this is getting so out of hand, but I don't want to tell her no. And he's like, well, if it could be a setup and I'm just going to let this happen and maybe we'll get caught. Because, I mean, maybe he was in over his head and he just wanted to make her happy. And he was like, she says it's not. Well, even if it is, at least I can get out of this.
He's like, I just don't know what else to do. So Tanya's questioned because she's at the scene of the fire, but she was not actually in the process of lighting a fire. So she's just questioned at first. She denies having anything to do with it. So she says that they are just driving around like they do a lot of nights, and Charlie asks her to drop him off and come back and pick him up. So the police are like, okay, so you didn't like question him at all? And she's like, no, I don't know. I just did it, whatever. And so the police ask her if this is the first time that he's done this or if he's done this before. And she's like, oh, no, this is the first time. Like, we've never done this. Meanwhile, Charlie is over here spilling his guts and telling them everything.
Yeah.
So in the process of the investigation, investigator Scott Wade visits Tanya's sister, Angie. So as you remember, her mom's house was left to both of them under the premise that when their grandmother passed away, then Angie would then get that house.
Yeah.
So Scott visits Angie, who lives out of town, to ask if Tanya could have had anything to do with this. Angie says that she doesn't know, but tells him that about a year ago, she gets a message on her phone that is a photo message of a house burning down from an unknown phone number. Okay. And it's her grandmother's house. That
oh my goodness.
Is hers, yes. So
I would be devastated.
Right? So Angie texts back and says, who is this? And the response is, it's your sister. So Angie asks, why are you sending me a picture of the house burning? I know you burned it. Then Tanya says, quote, no, you were the one who said you were going to come here and burn it, end quote.
So this is a fire that was set before any of the others?
Yes, correct.
And why didn't Angie go to the police or anything or report about this?
So Angie had moved in to her grandmother's house after her grandmother passed away, but her and Tanya got into a fight, essentially because Tanya was coming on to Angie's boyfriend. So they got into this big cat fight, and then Angie just moved out of town, just left, just washed her hands of it, whatever. So as I mentioned before, it would come out later that their father was likely abusive to them, and Tanya would often protect Angie. So Angie just kind of had this loyalty to her sister, so she just...
I can understand that.
Yeah, so when police come and question her about all of these fires, then she brings this up, but at the time she never told anyone, and no one was ever charged with the burning down of her grandmother's house.
Okay.
So eventually with this evidence and Charlie's confession, Tanya is arrested as well. So Charlie pleads guilty to the fires. I mean, he's already confessed. He's like, yep, I did it. So he gets sentenced to 15 years.
Okay.
But Tanya pleads not guilty and still says that she had nothing to do with it. So she's in prison awaiting trial, and so her and Charlie are communicating to each other, so they're able to write letters. They have some guards who will send letters back and forth. And so she keeps telling Charlie that he needs to plead guilty to all of the fires, that he needs to take back his comment about not lighting them all, basically so she can get away, and tells him that he needs to admit to all of them.
And do you think, because we have, flirted with the idea that, Charlie might have had a low IQ, that Tanya knew that and she's just taking advantage of it?
Oh, yeah.
And just being like,
100%.
You already pled guilty, you go to jail, don't,
Yeah, just
let me off.
Just do them all, it's fine. So eventually Tanya somehow gets released on bail. How? They don't have any money. I don't know. Maybe we do know. Let's find out.
Okay.
So they continue to send letters and talk on the phone. And she's like, Charlie, we have to get married, so let's plan a wedding. Because if we are married, we don't have to testify against each other. Okay. So Charlie's already pleaded guilty. He's not going to have a trial. There's no testifying. This doesn't help him in any way.
It doesn't benefit him at all. It's just benefiting Tanya.
And so his family realizes this, and so they try to tell Charlie, hey, don't do this, she's just trying to screw you over.
Mm-hmm.
But Charlie doesn't believe them. He's in love with her. She would never hurt him. It's not going to happen. So police sheriff Todd Godwin finally convinces Charlie that Tanya has another boyfriend and shows him evidence that she has been writing to several other men during the time that she was in jail, because obviously they have copies of all of these letters, so he can show Charlie, look, here's proof that she is cheating on you while she's trying to get you to get married.
Yeah, so
really
screwing him over.
Yeah, so he's finally like, okay, I'm done with you. I don't want anything more to do with you. I'm not going to try to help you.
And this is before they got married, right? They're not married at this point?
No, they're not married.
Okay,
they never get married. Good. Yep. So December 2nd, 2013, Tanya is arrested again. So before, when she was arrested, I don't remember the exact charge, but it was just for the one fire that they were caught at.
Okay.
So she got out on bail for that one, and then after Charlie gives a full confession to exactly what Tanya did, now on December 2nd, 2013, she is arrested and charged with 61 additional counts of arson.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a lot.
Yes. So while Tanya is in prison awaiting trial for these crimes, she writes a book and self-publishes it on Amazon about a woman who is wrongly convicted. And this woman's name is Sonia. And this woman writes Sonia-isms.
Oh my God.
So
is she little suit instead of toot toot?
Little suit. A little taste of suit.
A little taste of suit.
I mean, that's very fitting, because suit, fire,
yeah, there we go.
So, interesting. But she, swears that she's wrongly convicted. So her first trial is in Virginia Beach on January 13th, 2014. And this is for the fire that they were arrested at on April 1st, 2013. So she's still pleading innocence, but after the trial, the jury does find her guilty. So now she has a second trial. Keep in mind, she has been arrested for 61 counts of arson.
That's a lot.
But we're going to have individual trials for each one.
I do think, I heard somewhere it might be the Small Town Dicks podcast I was just listening to. There was an episode, and they said basically if they can do them as separate cases, they can make them, do you know how consecutive and concurrent works?
Yep.
Okay, well, I'll explain it to, like, the listeners. So basically, if you have a charge and it's consecutive to another one, that means that, say, you get sentenced to 2 years, and then you have another 2 years consecutive, that's 4 years total. Whereas concurrent, if it's 2 years and 2 years, it's just 2 years together. So I do think, like, with this, like, they were trying her separate. So if she only got 2 years for the first arson, well, now it's going to be consecutive, and they can really, really pile on the terms.
Yes, absolutely. So during her second trial, there is a reverend who is used as a character witness. So he talks about that Tanya couldn't have done this. You know, she's a good person. So later it comes out that this is Tanya's new boyfriend.
Oh my goodness.
And
Lord.
so the prosecution's like, you can't use your boyfriend as a character witness.
Yeah, that's not
I
how
don't
that
care
works.
if you are a reverend. It doesn't work that way. So she's found guilty in the second trial. So her third trial is scheduled for April 2015 in Virginia Beach. And keep in mind, at this point, the prosecution is paying $3,000 a day in motel and meal costs for the prosecution personnel.
That is a lot of money.
Yes, this is a super, super expensive set of trials, especially if we're going to continue this for another 58 trials.
Yeah.
And so people who are at this third trial say that when Tanya shows up, that she's just very, she just looks run down, and she's worn out, and she's exhausted, and they think that she just doesn't want to do this anymore. So what she does is on the day that her trial is supposed to start, she submits an Alfred Plea, which for those of you who don't know, an Alfred Plea is you're pleading.
So you're pleading guilty, but you're saying I didn't do it, but I know that the prosecution has enough evidence to convict me. So they're saying, like, I didn't do it, but you do have enough evidence to convict me. And so it's kind of a way of, like, the prosecution getting that guilty verdict, but also for the defendant to not exactly have, like, admitted to anything, basically.
Yes, because with a typical guilty plea, like, they make you say in court that you actually did this, you were not coerced into, because they want to avoid clients who plead guilty just to avoid a harsher sentence, even if they did not actually do the crime that they were accused of. So this is kind of the way around that, to say, for them to be able to say, well, I didn't actually do it, but I know you're going to convict me, so I'll basically legally say that I did. And also the Alfred Plea means that the defendant cannot sue the state. So if for some reason later down the road she is found to be innocent, she cannot sue for the time that she spent in jail because she technically pleaded guilty.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting, legal maneuver there.
Yeah.
But so she submits that, and she is sentenced to 17 and a half years in prison.
And she could have saved all that time and money because she only got like 2.5 more years than Charlie did. So
yeah, and that's what they talked about with the last trial, that she was just like, I'm just done. Like,
and
this is,
that has to be hard. And I mean, I know she's kind of not the best person because she did, do all these fires. But I mean, in the court, they're just like probably talking about her like she is the scum of the earth. So that does have to like suck to sit there and hear everyone talk about you and how horrible you are. And even if you're trying to maintain this innocence, which I think we all know that she did it. But even, if you're trying to maintain your innocence, like, that does suck to hear people talking about you like that. So
yeah, and it's such a small town, so everyone knows you, everyone has known you your whole life, even though it's not a huge town that like obviously this story didn't spread across the country like so many others do, but because of the climate in that area where everyone is so close-knit and everybody knows everybody, like, this was a big deal and everyone knew about it and everyone's talking shit about you. And like we said, like, both of them had a lot of issues from childhood on, again, not to excuse criminal behavior in any way.
Because there are plenty of people who have really, really rough childhoods who are abused or on drugs or anything like that, and they do not grow up to be murderers or arsonists or anything like that.
Yes.
You can't let that be a full excuse. You can explain it somewhat, that they can't cope exactly because of this, but you can't just like forgive it, because there are still plenty of people who had really rough upbringings who don't do these things.
Yes, who do not burn down 86 abandoned buildings.
Which is just insane.
So that is the crazy story of Tonya Bundick and Charlie Smith and the Accomack County, Virginia arsons.
And that was, I don't want to say fun, because fire's not fun, but the shit Tanya does and says, that was really entertaining. And I think especially since, our last episode was Lacey Peterson and very, very serious, this was a little bit lighter. Thankfully, it doesn't seem like anyone was hurt themselves. It was mainly just the properties. So that's always a good thing, but still don't be an arsonist. Don't burn things down. That is someone's property. That is someone's, if it's their house, it's their well-being. Like, I can't imagine losing everything just because somebody wanted to, I don't know, orgasm.
Right? Because you needed a way to get off, so you...
I mean, you burned down my house so you can have sex once? Like, no, thank you.
I'm also looking on Amazon to see if her book is still out here, but I'm not finding it. So if you find it, let us know, because I feel like it would be a pretty entertaining read.
I do too. I mean, that would be very, very interesting.
Whew. So, all right. So now that we've gotten through that, what is your perk of the week, Courtney?
Okay, my perk of the week. So this weekend I got to spend some like one-on-one time with my best friend, not Jaclyn best friend, but but my best friend Dallas. We've been friends, 14 years.
Hey Dallas!
Hi Dallas! He said he doesn't listen to podcasts, but maybe he'll listen to us.
You better listen to us, Dallas.
Yes, Dallas. So he's been my best friend for a really long time. We've been through like everything together. And so we got to go, we went to a rally in Nashville, and so we got to just hang out, and it was super fun. It was super fun to be at the rally because it was more, like-minded people at this rally. It's nice to be in a little group of people who have around the same thoughts as you. And I did get to shake Pete Buttigieg's hand, which was cool. I'm sorry, sir. I already voted and it wasn't for you, but it was very nice to meet you. And it was hopeful, like being, around people who thought the same thing, and him just kind of being like, even if it's not me, like, just know we're in this together. Things are going to look up. So it was really nice. And it was fun to be with Dallas and hang out and all that. So it's been a long time since we've had like one-on-one time, just the two of us. So it was super fun.
Good.
What's yours, Jaclyn?
So my perk of the week is very similar, except I went to the right rally this weekend, and
excuse me.
And by right, I mean the left, the super left rally.
Yes, super left.
But the correct rally. So Andrew and I drove up to Springfield, Virginia, which is right outside of D.C., which I did not realize until I was looking at traffic the morning that we left.
That D.C. traffic is hell.
Yeah.
Because Kevin's family lives in Baltimore, and we have to drive through it, and it's like,
Ooh.
Oh my gosh, it's like, it's 11 a.m. on a Friday. How are there still so many people?
Yeah, so it took us about 3 hours to finally get there, get parking. It was crazy, but that's awesome because there were, as Andrew texted me while we were recording this, there were 10,300 people at this rally yesterday.
Wow.
Which is amazing. There's also a picture. Thankfully, Andrew is a giant. He is 6'4", and he was wearing a bright red hoodie, so you can see us in this huge sea of people. So
oh, that's so awesome.
I'll send you that. So I don't even know if I said where we went. So we went to the Bernie Sanders rally.
Which is the person I voted for. In case you were guys wondering, I'm so sorry, Pete Buttigieg. You were hot. Your husband is hot. Thank you for everything you're doing, and I'm really sorry I didn't vote for you, but I had to go with the feel the burn.
Yes, feel the burn, guys. But it was wonderful. We got to hear a lot of great people speak, people that, like you said, we really believe in their ideas and their mission, and it was a very uplifting and positive experience. And Andrew and I got to see a new city that we have not got to see yet, and we got to sit in some more traffic on the way home, and then finally go get some wings. And but it was just, it was a good day. And
yeah, and I think, especially with Facebook and just seeing people share false information and hateful things, and it's just nice to be in a place of hope.
So no matter who you vote for, guys, no matter which candidate on either side you vote for, let's just all remember we're all human beings, and we just have to hang on to that humanity and look out for one another and be kind to one another. And
yeah, and
that's
we
all.
won't try to be too political on this podcast, because your views are your views and your opinions, and you are allowed, it is your American right to vote however you think. One thing I just want to say is just be sure to fact check everything and make sure you have all the information. So if you 100% support a candidate, just make sure you're supporting them on the correct facts and not nitpicking or choosing what you want to believe is true. Just try to be really informed, and hopefully if you don't exactly believe our views, you're not going to hate us and give us a 1-star after this. Like we said, everyone's welcome here. We're not trying to isolate anyone. We're just trying to say how we feel. So
yep.
And if you hate it, just hit that 15-second skip. Just skip.
Just skip through all this and ignore it. But like Courtney said, you have a world of information at your fingertips. So please do your research. Know who and what you're voting for. Get out there and vote. At the time that we are recording this, Super Tuesday is in 2 days, but at the time that this will be released, we will be past that. But if in your state you have not yet had your primary, go vote. So
support local elections are as important as the presidential one, and always be informed, and just believe what you believe in, and just try to be a good person. It doesn't, you don't have to be any certain party to be a good person. You don't have to be any certain religion, race, gay, straight. You can be a good person no matter who you are. And so just don't forget that there's a lot that tears us apart and we don't agree on, but there's more that brings us together, and we're more alike than we think sometimes. So just remember that.
I think that is a good message to end on, Courtney.
I think so too. So how about everyone just go ahead and have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.
Please don't.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.